So, hi everyone, this is the second lesson about Romanticism. Please get your books, the cornerstone, the literary test, and the art with a view, that is your art textbook. We are talking about the pre Romantic poets uh, now, and in particular, I'll give you a lesson on William Blake. But first, I like to sum up and to repeat something about the Romantic spirit. So, Romanticism is an artistic and intellectual movement, and a literary movement as well, of the late 18th century. And it is a reaction against conventional forms and attitudes. It is a reaction against enlightenment as well. Um, the Romantic authors believed in democratic ideals and revolutionary principles of social equality. The individual is in the center of life and experience. There is a centrality of subjective experience and individual perception. So uh, we have to focus on the importance of the primitive individual, someone who lives closer to nature, and man can unlock the mysteries of life through emotions and senses. Emotions, feelings, imagination, sensibility. And there is an extreme fascination with nature. As we said last time, we can divide the romantic poets in pre-romantic poets and romantic poets. There will be about romantic poets, first and the second generation. But as I said, as I have just said, we concentrated today on William Blake, who belongs to the pre-romantic poets. William Blake was both a poet and a painter. He was a forerunner of the romantic poets. And most of his poetry is easy to understand, but at the same time, um, he's got visionary elements, and he utilizes symbolism. Um, his most famous work is Songs of Innocence and Experience, and it is a collection of poems. So he belongs to the early Romantic poets, and the main features of these poets are a meditative mood, a preference for melancholy images of ruins and desolations, a wish to explore Britain's past of rural origins, and a high degree of subjectivity. So, as I have just said, William Blake uh, was an artist, a complete artist. He was born in London in 1757, and he had a very severe religious education, a very strict religious upbringing. Didn't go to school uh, because he began engraving when he was very young. By 1782, he became an independent engraver, and he began also to write poetry, and he produced his own books. So each poem was hand printed and colored by Blake himself, who was also a painter. So he used a method which he called illuminated printing. This method of printing is a method of printing text and illustrations by etching the design into a copper plate. per cui lui incideva i disegni su queste lastre di rame e stampava i suoi libri e le sue opere in casa e corredava ogni poema con un disegno. He accompanied his poetry with beautiful illustrations, and he was often also regarded as a madman, unfortunately, because he used to have visions. His main works are Songs of Innocence, 1789, Songs of Innocence and Experience, 1794, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, Milton and Jerusalem. About his style, Blake used a simple vocabulary, so simple words, a clear syntax, and a traditional metrical pattern. And he also used repetition, alliteration, and assonance to create a musicality of his words. Because he believed that the sound of a word was very important, so as important as the meaning of the word. As I said before, he accompanied his poems, his words, with a series of images, of illustrations. And that means that there was a strong visionary quality which he achieved. He also utilizes symbols as the child and the lamb. In fact, his main work, Songs of Innocence and Experience, speaks about the two contrasting states of the human mind. So, every poem that belongs to the Songs of Innocence correspond to another poem that belongs to Songs of Experience. They complement each other. So these two collection of poems are complementary. So he thought that without contraries there was no progression. So contraries could be hate and love, reason and sensibility, love and hate, attraction and repulsion. So these contrasts, in his opinion, were necessary to human existence. So to Blake, the two states of innocence and experience corresponded to the man's outside and the man's inner world. Innocence was symbolized by childhood, so innocence corresponds to the child, and this is a state of happiness, of freedom, because child are free, are happy. So in this phase, phase of life, the innocence, God loves and cares about the child. Blake uses also another symbol, that is the lamb, because the lamb is the symbol of purity, of innocence, and the lamb symbolizes this world. Songs of Experience, on the contrary, represents the phase of life that brings sadness and suffering, and the symbol of this collection is the tiger. The tiger represents the dangerous and frightening forces of the maturity of man. And while Songs of Innocence could be set in the nature, Songs of Experience are almost always found in cities like London. So the cities, the urban setting, symbolizes the injustices and the exploitation of the time. Songs of Experience corresponds also to the ordered phase, the ordered reason and conscience, which substitutes the childish faith and trust. So a child lives in a world of faith, of trust, of happiness, and of freedom. And on the contrary, men, when they become adult, they live their phase of experience, but it is a phase of sadness, of suffering, of injustices, and of exploitation. Experience and innocence are two contraries, but as I said before, they are complementary states. And he, the poet, the author, Blake, thought was convinced that these two states, experience and innocence, were necessary to achieve the real knowledge. So, uh, for understanding the real knowledge of life, the two phases of life are necessary. Um, Blake anticipated the Romantic movement, and he represented a break with the past, a definite break with the past. He had several visionary skills, and he distrusted reason. So he was against enlightenment and the reason, and he gave a great importance to imagination. Uh, for Blake, every poet was a prophet, and he had to expose the evils and corruption of society. So he thought that a poet was a sort of prophet, and he thought that uh, his duty was to talk about corruption, talk about the injustices, talk about the suffering of the poor people. Um, so he denounced it, he did criticism against the society of the time. Of course, it was an indifferent society, and because there were many inequalities and the exploitation of children, of the workers, he supported. So he was involved socially, and he supported the American and French revolutions because they symbolized the aspiration of freedom and justice, and he fought against oppression and establishments. So, to sum up, William Blake, he was born in a poor London family, and he was extremely talented since he was a child. He, in fact, began engraving and painting when he was a child, and he developed a personal printing technique, the illuminated painting. He also began to write poetry when he was about 30, and his main work, the most known, is the collection of poems, Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. He also wrote prophetic books, um, and he also illustrated the Divine Comedy. About his style and about the themes he talked about, a harsh criticism of contemporary society. Um, so he denounced the tyranny, and he denounced injustices, and he denounced the poor conditions of the workers, the terrible conditions of the workers who were exploited. Um, it's very important the figure of the child in his poems because he is a symbol of the oppressed. So he talked about the theme of childhood and blessed the age of innocence, the age of childhood. There's also in his poems a contrast and opposition uh, that brings progress and change. So the innocence and experience are complementary states of human life. The phase of experience represents the maturity, the condition of the adult. Huh? There is also, he utilizes visionary features and imagination, and his poems are highly metaphorical and they are highly meant for being metaphorical understood. So, Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience are two collections of poems. Songs of Innocence are full of enthusiasm, while Songs of Experience has got a gloomy vision of the world. And the two collections explain very well Blake's dual vision of life. So, childhood is a state of uncorrupted innocence, while experience is uh, the evil and the injustice of the world.